Hello and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be working on a rather large oil painting. This oil painting is based off of a picture I took of Kamakura, Japan back in 2019, I think. I had this painting sketched out for a couple years now and just never had the time to start working on a rather large painting. I was going through the process of like moving and starting a new job, and my ventilation system just was awful at that point. I was basically just painting in the same room that I sleep in, and it just wouldn't have worked on a large scale painting. And so I waited until I had proper ventilation, a good amount of windows that I could actually open. But yeah, finally got around to painting this one. This video is about making mistakes and learning from it, and that it's okay to just restart. It's not a problem if you have to just completely redo a painting. I need to learn that for myself, because when I get stuck on a painting and I realize halfway through that I hate it, I usually just throw it off to the side and then I never finish it. And my whole purpose with this video was to force myself to complete something. So even if I don't like how it looks in this initial stage, it's very easy to just completely restart. Because if I already don't like how it looks, it's not like I'm gonna mess it up even more. If I'm remembering correctly, I believe the colors I was using was phthalo blue, Prussian blue, cadmium yellow medium, which I don't use that often, cadmium red medium, and I think that was it. But my biggest issue with this painting, and you can probably see it with how I'm trying to use my brushes, and I just feel very uncertain throughout it. It was way too colorful for what I was trying to go with. The reference photo was a bit dull. It was during a kind of cloudy day during the fall when I was in Kamakura, and I just felt like these colors weren't getting across the emotion that I wanted to have in this painting. It just didn't feel like the right color palette for what I was going for. But as an artist, you usually want to just push through, no matter if it's just a mental block or the ugly stages of a painting. And so that's what I was trying to do. And at this stage, I absolutely hated it. It was just not working for me. That ground was just way too vibrant for the shadows that I wanted. I couldn't get the right colors for the houses in the background. The like shrubbery just wasn't natural colors. And so I took down some of my older paintings, and these are using honestly the same color palette, and I'm trying to figure out what's wrong. Like, why don't I like this painting compared to the other ones I'm using? And then I pull out my color chart that I made back in college, and I'm just trying to see what mixtures would work best for me, because I am just not going with this particular color palette. And I was just in a complete mental roadblock. I couldn't figure it out. I realized maybe I should just go back to the colors that I feel comfortable with, like my yellow ochres and my sap greens. And so next, I was still trying to figure out what was going wrong with this painting. And so I'm pulling out some of my books that I have based off of other artists, or like just painting books in general. I've gotten all of these books basically from thrift stores, and so like it's just whatever piqued my interest at the time. It's not that I have a particularly favorite artist in this collection other than, the Impressionists. Those I usually just pick up books based off of Impressionists. So I've pulled together a small collection of books that I'll look at and try to figure out what I like from them. So I'm looking at another color chart. I make so many color charts just to help me figure out what I want in a painting, and I'm going through all these books to see how these masterpieces inspire me. What do I like about them, basically? So for some, it's the lighting, like on that tree. Others, it's how they group together shapes, like this one. Others, it's just raw impressionism. And again, there's just a lot of good examples of using dark against light in the Impressionist paintings. I really love looking at Jack Vetriano's paintings. I love how he uses warm lights throughout a lot of his paintings. For some reason, it reminds me of like The Great Gatsby, like that time period. And it's just very pretty color palettes used with like blocky painting techniques. This next book is probably my absolute favorite. I'm so glad I found this. It's by Harriet Shore, and I've never seen these paintings before. Like, I'm not usually someone who likes still lifes, but the way that she does her color palettes and just like the shadows, everything is super vibrant and just, I don't know, it feels beautiful to look at. It's very different from a still life that I'm used to. I was very much drawn to these monochromatic type paintings here, and I don't know, I like my paintings to have a dominant color throughout. This is another Impressionist book that I have. It's just ones with a little bit more duller colors. I really like how this pot was painted. And I have a very hard time doing tone and light in my paintings. I actually can't really see light that well. Like when we would do still lifes, I literally couldn't tell where the light source was coming from a lot of the time because it just looked the same to me no matter what. And so looking at all those books, I realized that I don't like the color palette I was using previously, so I'm gonna just try out these ones. They're a bit more of a duller color palette, I would say. I believe this is very similar to a color palette I used for one of my favorite paintings I've ever made. I'll try to put a picture of it on the screen here, but as of right now, I added another color later. The colors I'm using are sap green, which is what you're seeing right now, Venetian red, which is a very like dull brick color, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, and cadmium red medium. So I mostly just got rid of the Prussian blue and that cadmium yellow medium just because like that was way too yellowy and bright for me. And I brought in my favorite colors, which are the sap green, Venetian red, and yellow ochre. I love these colors so much. They create such a moody color palette for me. And because I was having such a hard time with the painting beforehand, those colors just weren't working for me. I wanted to just do some swatches. I was literally just grabbing some of the paint and mixing it with another color on the palette, obviously, but I wasn't doing it in any real order. I just wanted to see what type of mixtures I could get throughout this entire piece. And so you can see that I'm getting a good variety of colors and tones. And I'm really liking those broken colors at the bottom. The ones that are very like dullish and grayed out, I think those would work very well for the type of mood and tone I'm trying to get. I definitely need to do a lot more color swatching before I do a big oil painting. I honestly feel like this helped me just understand mentally what type of colors I could get with just this small mixture of, my small color palette. My palette is an absolute mess now, but at least I know what colors I am going to be using for this painting. In order to make this painting work, I had to accept the fact that it just wasn't right, that I made a complete mistake at the very beginning. I should have been more careful with the colors I chose and just been more careful with how I want to represent the time I spent in Kamakura. I had to just completely cover over the work I've already done, and I know for me personally that's very hard to do. I tend to not do that many layers in oil painting anymore, just because I don't have a lot of time to spend on one big painting. But the hardest part is honestly just covering over work I've already done and making it better. Obviously, I didn't cover over every single part. You can still see some of that previous color palette underneath this second layer. And honestly, I think that helped give a little bit of highlight and pop of color in the painting that it wouldn't have had if I just went with this color palette initially. And so you can see it at the very bottom on the road. I still have that Prussian blue and phthalo blue there. And this is where we're going to wrap up today with the painting. Next time, I'm going to keep going with the color palette I chose. I make a mess with my solvent and give myself a massive headache, and yeah, I finish up the painting there. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned for the next one. Bye!